Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, but this time we're not safe and sound. Not safe and sound. Back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, but this time we're not safe and sound. Not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the FPV News with me, JB, and you.
It's Blunty. That's me.
Oh yeah, we're gonna work it out. How you doing this week, Blunty?
Good. How about you?
I'm good. I last night when I was live streaming and I was all sniffly and I said it's allergies. I think it wasn't allergies. I think I have a cold now. So y'all make sure you're masked up. So you don't get the live stream No, wait, that doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work like that. Hopefully you feel better.
Thank you. I'm gonna try to get through this. I'll be all right.
Yeah.
But I could not possibly say, oh, we have to cancel the news because I'm sick, because we have some freaking bonkers news items this week, including one that literally came in while we were reviewing like the show, and we changed the whole number one leading item. To cover it.
We did.
Do you want to tease it?
Well, I think a lot of people are showing up in the chat asking about it, but unfortunately it looks like a source has said DJI is discontinuing the air unit in the Vista.
And we'll talk more about that, but I want you guys to know that we wouldn't just clickbait you with bullshit, but also we're like, this obviously is not confirmed, so we'll see. But in the meantime, let's just take a second and thank the beautiful people here in the chat. Yes. Thank you guys so much for being here. Yay. Give yourself a hands up. And the beautiful people here in the Discord as well, who support me on Patreon. Yeah. Who are your sources? Says JB. Bring them before me. We cannot reveal our sources. Unfortunately, that was one of the conditions for getting the information. So we'll talk more about that very soon. We're not going to make you wait. We're going to put that right up near the front instead of like some streams would do, tease you and keep it till the very end. We're not. That's not our style.
True.
But first, we always start each week with our public service announcements, and this week will be no different because I have my titles numbered and I can't go out of order. So we're going to start with a public service announcement about Diatone resurrecting an old gyro that we thought was dead. And why should we care? What's going on here, Blunty?
I don't know if that's true. Okay, well, let's talk about it.
Oh, you want to argue?
Yes.
No. Go ahead.
So Diatone has been swapping out basically. For a long time, they've been still using the MPU 6000. That's been the common the IMU that they've used, and lately they've been shipping them with the MPU 6500 instead of the MPU 6000.
Right. Now, the reason that people care about this, and I've highlighted here where it says MPU Series 6-axis. This used to say MPU 6000 once upon a time. They've changed it in their listings, although... so the reason we care about this is that there's a common belief that the MPU 6000 is like a very, very good, best performing gyro for FPV, and that others are inferior. And like Chris Rosser did this roundup of gyro performance and found that they were very similar. But there's a common belief. But I think a lot of people, Blunty, don't remember the MPU 6500.
Well, and that I just also want to make sure we're not confusing with the MPU 6050. Because the MPU 6050 was the common one for a long time, but it didn't do 8 kilohertz. And then we got the MPU 6000.
I barely remember the MPU 6050, to be honest with you.
Yeah, which did 8K, and which was basically the same cutoff. And then the MPU 6500 is also the same cutoff, the same low-pass filter cutoff. Basically almost exactly the same as the MPU 6000, but it just has a slightly higher noise threshold.
Right. In my mind, there's two things going on here. One is, and we can show this letter that was sent to me by a person. This is how I first found out about this. People emailed me and they were annoyed about it. I got this letter from someone and he said, I asked on my live stream, can anybody give me more information? Give me some confirmation. And he said he bought this Mamba Basic F722 Mini stack. And in the past, it had an MPU 6000. He bought it recently. And now, sure enough, it has. Let me see if I can get to he did the Betaflight CLI and it has, I'm not sure if you guys can read that. It has the MPU 6500. And the first time I heard about this, it was a person who was annoyed because the product page still said MPU 6000. And a person reached out to me and said, Diatone is promising MPU 6000s and they're delivering 6500s. And the bottom line is, you should get what you pay for. So now Diatone has changed the product listing, although they're still being a little ambiguous about it. The question is the 6500 a worse gyro? I should say, Diatone told this user when he asked that they had tested it and found that it was fine. And that's probably true, but also it doesn't mean it's fine because we just know.
I'd basically, I did some asking around about this. I looked at what I could find, and basically I couldn't find any logs, like actual comparison logs or data. I did find a couple people, like I asked Quick Flash with EmuFlight, and I asked with Talama with Betaflight and a few other people, what they thought about it. And basically they were like, from what we've seen, it is higher noise because there is a higher noise threshold on the board or on the MPU.
So you just look at the data sheet and see that.
Right, but how to quantify that or having logs or data, none of that has been hard logged or super compared on the same rigs that I've seen people. It's just basically I used this MPU 6500 and it seemed like the noise was higher. And looking at the data sheet, it does make sense that the noise was higher. I have to wonder, how much higher is it actually? And will people notice that they're running this? How tight is your filtering? Are you even running to the edge filters and stuff? I think there's a lot of cases where the name MPU 6500 and having this thing where they think it's kind of a bait and switch, I worry that will trigger users into thinking it's a bad thing when necessarily, I think in a lot of cases it won't necessarily be as bad. From what I know, it's the same MEMS, it's the same internal build, it's the same specs, it's the same low pass. Basically it's the same thing. It's just got a higher noise threshold.
Yeah, so the higher noise threshold in theory will mean that you won't be able to push your filters quite as far without getting hot motors or gyro twitches. And the question is, what's the limiting factor there? Is it that your frame has a resonance issue or your motor, your bearings are shot? Or is it the noise threshold? Like, is that the weakest link in the chain? And we just don't know. The truth is that a lot of manufacturers are going to be moving to what we would call like alternative gyros, because the MPU 6000 and the ICM series gyros that have been used for the last, well, for the MPU 6000, it's probably been 5 or 6 years, and the ICM series, 3 years, I would guess. They are getting more and more expensive and harder to get. And that's why we're seeing more and more flight controllers with the Bosch gyro, and now this MPU 6500 that Diatone's using. So we wanted to call it out. I wanted to call it out because at the time I decided to run this story, I thought the product page was still saying MPU 6000. Thankfully, Diatone has changed it, and people should know that what they're getting is in some ways a worse gyro, but maybe you won't notice a difference.
Yeah, I'm pretty interested to see people test these.
Yeah.
You know, when I asked Talama, he put in the chat as well. This is something he told me. He's like, I'm still just as likely to suspect board regulator design as a driver of that, much or more as the IMU hardware, because of the noise from the board drivers and stuff. And it's so small, and this is such a small difference that it may not be enough to actually make a huge difference. But now that these boards are getting more and more out there, I'm definitely interested to see some people test them and get those comparisons and see where this lines up. Yeah,
Dominic Clifton, Mr. Clean Flight, and the manufacturer of the SP Racing series of flight controllers, has talked about how bad the 3.3 volt rail, the regulator design, is on most flight controllers. And who knows how much of that is him just being sort of a grumpy guy, or how much is actually objectively true. But a clean 3.3 volt rail with capacitors placed near the gyro and other things that I don't know about will absolutely make for cleaner gyro data. So if manufacturers are cutting corners there, the fact that the gyro has a slightly worse noise, again, it goes back to what's the weakest link in the chain. We don't know. Okay, so one question there from Slidby FPV. If you can find MPU 6000 flight controllers, should you buy them now? I don't know, Blunty. I'm not sure I would buy a flight controller today just because of the gyro that was on it. The BMI gyro from Bosch is fine.
Yeah. I would not. I think there's plenty of good options, and there'll be plenty of good options out there. Like Talama mentions that BMI 270, Chris Rosser did that shootout, and then he realized there was an OSR4 mode, and they enabled that in Betaflight. So now that is in the newest version of Betaflight. You can use OSR4, and that gyro data is better, and that's just going to be constantly, stuff like that will happen. Designs will change, filters will be added, whatever we need. So
Eric Joey says Pavel Spakowski has an article praising the 6500 and saying it's like really good, but Pavel does like to stir the pot, so I'm not sure how much I will lean into that. Okay, let's move.
Speaking of stir the pot.
Speaking of stirring the pot, let's move to the story that most people are here to. You've had 12 minutes to get here. Now we're going to talk about it. Here's where I want to start this story, Blunty. I want to start with the leaks about the Dji V3 goggles, and then we'll talk about what that might mean for the air unit in the Vista. I'll let you do that part. Dji V3 goggles, Dji FPV V3. We've had some leaks from fairly confirmed people that it's coming. We also someone found in the code for the Dji FPV Assistant app, they found a line of code that referenced the Dji FPV V3 goggles. So we have a good indication that they are coming. Now, is that going to be 2 months or 6 months? We don't know, but they're coming. They're in the works. And another leak from a semi-reliable source said that they would be 1080p OLED screens. Very exciting. I like to point out that doesn't mean it's going to be 1080p over the air link. It could just be a 1080 screen showing a 720 feed, but OLED screen, very exciting. But they also said it was not going to be backwards compatible with existing air units and Vistas, which suggests that, well, we don't know. There's also a new FPV drone that's supposed to be coming, and the goggles will surely be compatible with that. But the big question that's on everybody's mind is, will DJI make a new air unit and Vista type thing to go with these new V3 goggles? And what does that mean for the existing hardware? And that brings us to the title of today's video.
Yeah, so we received information from through the grapevine right before this very show. And they basically told us that it looks like vendors are going to be no longer able to order the DJI Air unit. And also, the Vista is in very limited supply and will likely be no longer available to order as well. But currently, it looks like there are issues ordering the Air unit from like the place you would typically order them as a vendor.
Yeah. And so we are obviously not at liberty to reveal our source, but suffice it to say, we would not have made this. We would, if we didn't think this was reputable and worth your time, we wouldn't just clickbait you with nonsense.
Yeah, we get a lot of. I get a lot of random messages and information that people think are, whatever, and say this and that, but this is what I would call a good, a source that we are okay sharing like this. So.
Okay. So this is communication from DJI to their dealers. And this is different than when, Bob Smith 2017 on Twitter leaks something, right? Yeah. This is, well, it's a leak, but it's a leak of communication between DJI and their dealers. So we can assume that it is, I was going to say we can assume it's authoritative, but like I've had weird communication with DJI before where they said, sure, oh, X is going to happen. And they were like, the guy I was talking to was sure that X was going to happen. And then it turned out that X didn't happen. DJI is a big company. There's a lot of players and they don't always behave in a consistent way, but it seems like those are winding down is the takeaway.
Yeah, at least, that source basically, verified that there were issues ordering Air units and that, Vistas were told to be in limited stock. So that is typically a sign that, like, if you can't just order what you need from DJI, there's something going on there, right?
Right. Now, the first question that people are going to ask is, what does this mean for the Codecs and RunCam sister products like Brandon Beans? And I mean, the cameras, the Codecs cameras and the RunCam cameras, my understanding is those are manufactured by Codecs and RunCam. But the Air unit and the Vista were never manufactured by Codecs or RunCam. They were always manufactured by DJI, and then they were repackaged by Codecs and RunCam and sold with their name on it. And I've speculated in the past about why DJI did this. It's not really relevant. Codecs and RunCam have never manufactured those, and they don't have the capacity to manufacture them. And I don't think we should, DJI is going to wind them down, but Codecs will keep it going. That doesn't seem likely to me.
Yeah.
The other question is, could this just be parts supply? Component supply issues. And they're not saying that they're winding it. See, what's the release of the V3, the leak that the V3 would not be backwards compatible, and now this message to dealers, these things together suggest a picture that DJI is winding down production. But then 2 months from now, DJI could go, oh, turns out we found all the chips we needed, and now we're going to keep making them. Yeah. We don't know.
That's also true. Also very possible. We know, I don't know. It's definitely hard to speculate, but I think the information at least tells us that, like, there's going to be some issue with supply. We did have a big drought before, right? There was a big,
it's true.
We had a huge gap where there was a difficulty sourcing most of the stuff, especially like the AP1302, like the good cameras, were basically
the 120 FPS cameras.
Yeah. And so, maybe it'll be a situation like that where we see them disappear for 6 months and then they end up showing up again. But like you said, with the timing of the other things that we've seen and the leaks, it sure is like conveniently timed. And hopefully hopefully they'll show back up. Hopefully maybe this is even something that won't affect anybody. So
there's been a big lockdown in China, as Dragonwing points out, a COVID lockdown. It's possible that this timing is coincidental. But here's the thing, Blunty. What's DJI's motivation to continue to manufacture these products? I guess I don't really understand their motivation in the first place because they don't even really have DJI branding on them. But I certainly could imagine a scenario where DJI is like, well, we got that FPV thing out of the way. We tested our new OcuSync 4.0 low latency link. Now we've got the FPV drone. And basically, I don't see why they would continue making these products. It's not a huge volume for them on their scale.
I would agree with you, but at the same time, then I have to ask, like, what is the intention of a V3 with the new Air units? Like, is there, like, if that is real, then they do have some interest still in continuing it. So like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
definitely don't think it makes a lot of sense to continue to make old chipset hardware, like
Right.
hardware that's
if
like
it's not
old.
compatible with the current generation.
Correct. Yeah. So it does make
Yeah.
sense to kind of roll it out if you're rolling in a new thing.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. I think this is just hard to speculate on, you know?
Well, but that's what we're here for. So my take is that the best case scenario for us, there's two things I'll say.
Yeah.
A good scenario for us, well, I mean, the best case scenario would be that DJI keeps making it and also gives us all a back massage. Okay, let's be realistic. The best case scenario, I think, is that the V3 goggle comes out. There is a new V3 Air unit and a V3 Vista with some enhanced features that make us all happy, and we all cuss the fact that we now have to buy all new gear, and most of us do it and suck it up, and welcome to the world of, you know, dating DJI or being a DJI customer, however you want to put it. I think a world where they continue to make V2 hardware. I think the minute the V3 was announced, that was not backwards compatible. The V2's days were numbered. However, there's probably enough in the pipeline out there that, I don't know, maybe that there was a drought for a while and you just couldn't get them. So hard to say. But
I think if they launch a new system, I think we'll see a lot of them show up on the market secondhand if people want to transition to the new system. So.
Yes. Yeah. So, you know, similar to what we said in early 2021 when we got word that there was going to be a drought of 120 FPS cameras and Codecs Vistas. And we said, look, if you desperately want them and you have the budget, now is the time to stock up. And I feel like we're in that situation again. Do you agree?
I don't think anything new is going to come for the V2 and the V1 goggle and system. So in that case, like when you think about it like that, yeah, I don't think there's any reason that I would put off purchasing any of these things if I knew that I was going to want them.
Yep.
So
the flip side is, for some people, the V3 may come and it may be amazing. Right. And people may be like, oh, I want this. But a lot of people are going to resent having to buy a whole new set of goggles.
Yeah, I mean, it would really have to blow me away to want to replace all my stuff when DJI is already, you know, we're already getting 50 megabit a second over the air. I mean, it's quite good. Yeah. So it's hard for me to imagine why I would want to move up.
Now, Slidby FPV mentions the fact that the V2 has been rooted and the community could pick up coding for it. Absolutely. I would love to see a scenario where the 606 or the 636 firmware is the last one, and then the root people take it and run with it and do amazing things. But if you can't get the hardware, I mean, eventually there's no hardware to get. And then what do? Yeah. You don't do it. You're done.
Can I just say, I think that's slide by FPV.
Slide by. Oh, that makes a lot more sense than Slidby. Slide by. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you. So, okay, that's where we're at, folks. We're in a position of transition, and we don't know. This is one of those things that from the day DJI released an FPV product, anyone who has any history with them knew that the day could come where they just decide, oh, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. And we all sort of hopefully went into that with eyes open and used the product, and who knows what it's going to come. I don't think they're going to just abdicate the FPV market and be like, all right, we're done with these guys. It doesn't feel like a move they would make, but I can't be sure.
I don't know. It feels a lot like a move they would make to me. I feel the opposite of that. I feel like tomorrow they'd be like, all right, it's done. Didn't make sense.
I mean, they would. If they felt it didn't make sense, they would just be like, okay, we're done. Yeah. I just don't think they would have gone this far if they hadn't decided that. Why is the DJI FPV drone V3 coming out?
Well, here let's say this: the fact that there is a DJI goggles V3 inside of the DJI Assistant means that no matter what, somewhere there's a piece of hardware assigned to that code that someone is testing. Right?
That's true. I agree.
So that's something we can just say. So that being the case, that we know at least there's some interest inside of DJI to test something called an FPV goggle V3. And so I guess that means that they do have some value. They see some value in continuing with our part of the market.
But the days of the V2 hardware and the current Air unit and Vista are numbered. I think that's my personal opinion.
And I'm going to say that probably leads pretty well into the next story when we talk about large companies that are focusing on FPV.
Let's do it. Let's get to what was going to be the leading article of tonight before that little leak came through, that little tip. The GoPro Bones. Oh my God. Catalyst Machine Works has been naming GoPros.
Yes.
GoPro Bones.
Yeah, the GoPro Hero 10 Bones has been launched, and it's an FPV specific product.
Like literally, there's a Cinewhoop on the product page. Sorry to interrupt you. Talk over you.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're like, this is an FPV thing. Don't you love it, FPV people?
GoPro knows we exist, guys. GoPro finally knows we exist.
Yes, we're like legit in their eyes. I was reading comments under their like video that they posted, and they're like, hey, we love FPV and stuff. You know, they're like interacting with fans and stuff. They were like,
look, it's a GEP-RC Cinelog.
Yeah. It's not even like fake, like sort of like FPV. It's like, hey, this is like real FPV stuff, you know?
So what is the Bones? The Bones is, let's find it.
The Bones is a Hero 10 black, but you take out all the stuff you wouldn't need.
You mean it's a naked Hero 10 black?
Basically, it's a naked Hero 10 black officially.
Yeah. So I've seen two responses to this, Blunty. And one is, wow, how amazing that GoPro knows we exist and gave us a product that we actually want. And the other is, but it's not a session. I wanted a session, GoPro. I don't want this. Which side do you fall on?
I fall on the side of like, thank God they actually paid attention to us and made a product for our market. You know, if you look at, you know, it's hard because if you consider, like, click on that video. I put a video as a second link there. And I think it shows a good example of, like, what they're going for here, like, where their market head is at, right? Because this literally just shows, like, the process. There
we go. We took all this shit out.
See all that stuff?
Yeah, it's gone. Boom. Oh.
So it's literally just the core board, the core sensor, the core processor, everything. The lens front, and then a new case built around. And yeah, I don't know. It's pretty cool. It's basically got all the features except a couple of the Hero 10, but it's in a, you know, it's officially a naked camera.
All right. So Falcon FPV points out it's 54 grams. That's pretty freaking light compared to a Hero 10. Even if you do the battery delete on a Hero 10, this is significantly lighter. The price.
Yeah, Hero 10. I checked. Hero 10 with battery delete and battery cover off is 115 grams.
So it's half less. It's not quite half,
it's
but
just because it comes out to
just
60.
A hair.
Like their marketing says 54 or whatever, but it's like it ends up being 60.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's a little more than half, which is pretty cool.
Price
is the same. So it's basically their marketing is the same. So it'll be $400 if you have a subscription. Yeah, or 500 without, I think, or 550.
So it's the same price as a Hero 10. Wait, we have the link right there. Let's just double check that.
And it's also, yeah, it's like instead of a battery that's, you know, they power from the quad, similar to like we've done naked GoPros in the past.
Yeah.
With that, you know, similar cable. They even have like the pin IO, so you can turn on and off the record, which is kind of nice.
So it's $399. But it comes down if you don't already have a GoPro subscription and you subscribe for the first time, I believe is what it actually is. I think I got mine for closer to $350. I could be wrong. Well, I'm not going to just go into my email and look at the I think
from my impression it was $400 with the subscription. But
no, look right here, Blunty. I mean, we should. Well, if only we'd researched this before the show, we'd sound like professionals. $399 with it doesn't have the item in there. It doesn't have the subscription in there, and it's showing $399.
Gotcha. Well, the checkbox is on though.
Where?
If you look on the right side, like if you X out of that on the right side at the top.
Save $150. Oh, interesting. Maybe it knows. Maybe am I logged in? Does it already know that I have the subscription? I don't know about that. Does it give you the? All right. Well, there's some details we don't know. The price is high. Some people feel that that's too much to pay for basically a naked Hero 10. But as you pointed out, what's the alternative if you want a naked camera?
Yeah, I mean the alternative is buying either a naked kit and then buying a Hero 10 at the normal price and then getting rid of a bunch of components. Or it's buying a more expensive version of that someone has bought a Hero 10 and a naked kit and then assembled it for you and charged for the labor and work.
Like, for example, that you can buy a naked GoPro Hero 8 from GetRC, not a kit, but a full camera, for $449. Now, that's a Hero 8, not a Hero 10.
Right.
Okay? Or you can buy a Hero 8 and a kit, and you can rip it apart yourself and take your chances that you don't damage it. But here's why I think this is going to be appealing. I think a lot of people are missing this. Number one, GoPro made it. Chances are very good it's more durable than a GepRC or a Beta FPV naked kit. Now, I don't know.
Yeah.
I bought one, and it'll come in the mail, and I'll tell you if it breaks. But, like, it's not a very high bar to say that it's more durable. And so, like, is the voltage regulator going to just fry and it's going to die on you one day for no reason? No way. But number two, if you have the GoPro subscription, you get 2 replacements a year, no questions asked. So, well, that's not free. They're not free replacements. I don't know what they cost. But
the Hero 10 is typically $100 per replacement, so I would assume it's going to be similar.
So the way I think of it is, you could theoretically be paying $400 plus 2 replacements is $600 for 3 cameras, which brings it down to $200 a piece.
Yeah.
Which is fairly reasonable if you break your cameras all the time.
Yeah, and that'll continue. So the next year you can extend, and then you get, the extra piece and stuff. And then as Carbon Cage points out, often they don't charge you. It depends on, like, I imagine with these, they probably will because they know it's going to be drone related, but it'll just depend on, but I know with some discretion, they've waived quite a few fees for people. In the past when they've sent them in. It is available exclusively in the United States currently. So that's a big rub for a lot of people.
Oh, it's a little bit of a strong swear for, sorry, my patriotism got the better of me. I'm a little loopy from the cold medicine. Yeah, America.
So they've said they don't have current plans. They don't have like a date for when it'll come to you, like worldwide. I would assume it'll depend on how many of these they sell.
Yeah,
and that's
I'm sorry, Ghost Branch. Ghost Branch, if you, we'll work something out. If you want me to send you one, we'll work something.
Also, I'd like to mention that like a lot of people have asked for the session, right? A session would have taken them redesigning a new board, a new sensor layout, a new organizational thing, maybe using an old case for the session or something, but still doing some redesigns to it, and then recasing everything, sourcing new batteries, and then getting it out to the end user. And then that's a new SKU that takes all this new work, and that's the new effort and such, right? Instead, you have them taking the board that's already being used, and then basically just pulling that out, making a new case, and then slapping that back together and selling that as a new SKU. So what you get is you get something that we would prefer, and they've decided to warranty it, but you end up getting something that didn't cost them an arm and a leg and a lot of R&D work to develop and get out to people. And there's not a lot of risk in producing them.
Right. The argument that people are making, and I get this argument because the session was a freaking dream. Like when I first saw this, I thought it had an internal battery, and I was so excited. And when I found out it didn't have an internal battery, I was like, it's still pretty good, but I was a little let down. The argument is that if GoPro is going to acknowledge that we exist, yay, why not give us the actual thing we most want, which is another session? And you're right that would have been a much bigger investment. Whereas this, they can kind of like just kind of poop this out and be like, what do you think, FPV? Is this good enough for you? And for a lot of people, I think it is going to be. The fact that it is a factory-built GoPro with a replacement plan, and it's a Hero 10, which is the top-of-the-line GoPro, and weighs 60 grams-ish, that's going to be a compelling package for a lot of people. I bought one. The big question that we don't know the answer to, Blunty, is how does this stack up to the Action 2? Which is also 60 grams and has a freaking battery in it and is an actual self-contained action camera.
Right.
Any thoughts?
It's hard to say too, because like, are you gonna like if we're talking about just for FPV, because this is an FPV focused product, and if you compare them to the Action 2, the Action 2 has a battery that you don't need, right? So because most people are just going to power from the quad, So
I mean, I'd rather have a battery, but I do like saving.
Yeah, but then you get all that heat from the battery, right? So
I know, but I like to be able to move it between. So what I would do is I would have a balance plug adapter, so I can easily move it between quads. I think I wouldn't want to solder a lead on every single GD quad, as long as I'm swearing today, that I own. That's going to be
definitely agree with that.
Drive me crazy.
Yeah.
So
also, I think this is a good way for them to learn about our market more. So now they're going to be supporting us and communicating more with the market, and people will be complaining about specific things they don't have. And yeah, maybe they'll get the idea that like, oh, we want, these certain features that are positive or
yeah,
negative.
a lot of people have said, like Andy Dredd, that it's the same price with no screens and no battery. You removed features, you should lower the price. But it's a much smaller market and a much lower volume, and they're basically taking a chance. So
Yeah, remember they had to mold that. Like that's not free.
Right. A lot of people don't understand that. I mean, you could certainly argue that whatever you want it to be the price you want it to be, that's your prerogative. But from a company's perspective, if they're going to sell, umpteen million GoPro Hero 10s, they can tolerate a much smaller margin and bring the price down. And if they're going to sell a few thousand of these Hero Bones, maybe tens of thousands. I mean, that's my guess. The FPV market in the USA is not that big. And, so the fact that they even made this at all, they can kind of ask their price and, if you don't like it, don't buy it. But
yeah.
Okay. One other thing we should acknowledge before we move on to like the fourth story, we're going to go long today, I guess, is it does come with Reelsteady Go subscription, right?
Well, that's the train. Yeah, that's how we get to the next story. So,
is that the next story?
Yeah. So, the GoPro Hero 10 Bones does come with a Reelsteady subscription, which is $100 value. And that is Reelsteady 2.0. They've just launched the new app, the GoPro Player, which is free for people. But if you want to use the Reelsteady or the lens correction features, then you're going to pay $100 to unlock it inside of the GoPro Player app. However, if you own Reelsteady Go, you probably have an email. Go check your email you registered with, and you have a code in there, an activation code for a free copy of Reelsteady V2. You can go right in the GoPro Player and type it in there.
I already have a Reelsteady subscription. Do I get a Reelsteady 2 thing for free?
Yes, you should have an email with an activation code.
Okay, so this $100, that $100 free thing, I already had that because I was a chump and bought Reelsteady Go a year ago.
Correct.
Well,
however, you could, in theory, sell that activation code.
Oh, yeah. Who wants to buy a Reelsteady activation code, kids? Who wants it? $75.
Some positives from Reelsteady V2, Reelsteady 2 that we've got here. Mm-hmm. They've got faster render times. We've got batch exporting. We can choose our output source, which seems kind of crazy to list as a feature, but it is a feature now. You can choose your output source. There are more codecs available.
What's going on, fellas? If you're watching this video, chances are
codec support, and it can be used offline, which is a big rub for people that they had to be connected to the internet to use Reelsteady. So.
Just muting my mic while I sneeze 1,000 times. Sorry about that, Blunty. We're looking here at Umagod's release video for Reelsteady Go 2.0. The big question people probably are going to have is how does it stack up to Gyroflow, which is now really good.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the features that they added in Reelsteady 2 were also kind of came at a similar time in Gyroflow. So we got things like the fast render and the batch export and output choice and codecs and lens corrections, and all those things came in addition to Gyroflow 2. So I think really what we need to see is multiple creators working with these a lot and kind of figuring out like which workflows work better for them. And this might be a case of like where people are using, some people like DaVinci Resolve and some people like Sony Vegas and that sort of thing. And maybe there's a couple options for people. So
yeah. All right. Well, anybody who's interested in Gyroflow 1.0, is it 1.0 or 2.0? This one is 1.0. 2.0. The new Gyroflow is freaking amazing. Paul Nurkala has a tutorial video. It's like 45 minutes long, but it's fantastic. And if you're interested in playing with that,
1.0.
It is 1.0. Okay.
Yeah.
They finally reached release. Definitely go check out Nurkala's video. Gyroflow is way better than it used to be. All right, let's move on, okay. Blunty, to the next.
Last but not least, the other thing GoPro did, because everybody was so stoked on GoPro already, but they were pissed off because GoPro did some stuff to mess up naked GoPros. We talked before on the news, like probably about a year ago, that they went in and they removed GoPro Protune from the app. So you had to have a screen on your device to use Protune. And everybody's like, don't update, and using other sources, and they're making Bluetooth remotes and all kinds of solutions to fix this. So GoPro has added back, if you update your Quik app today, you will have Protune back in the app as it was before.
I'm so happy about this.
Now,
that pissed me off so much.
Obviously, this is probably because they released a camera without a screen on it. However,
don't care.
Thank you, GoPro, for doing this regardless.
Thank you, GoPro. Thank you. You did something we didn't like. I complained about it. Then you undid it and you fixed it. And I don't care why you did it. I'm happy that you did it, and I really appreciate it. Thanks, GoPro. Appreciate you. Alrighty. Next up. Wait, get out of here. Hang on. I've messed up the titles. Get out of here. There we go. HDZero. We talked about DJI. We talked about GoPro. We're going to talk about HDZero, and then I guess we have to talk about Red Cat. No, I don't think we have any Red Cat news.
No, they're not on the list today. So.
All right. HDZero, what do they got for us, Blunty? Yeah, right.
All right.
FPV news bingo. That's good.
All right. So we finally got it. We've talked about it for a while. We've been waiting on it to come. Everybody's been like, Shark Bite's out of stock. They stopped making them, please.
HDZero. Don't call it Shark Bite anymore. Oh, I see what you. I see. I apologize, Blunty.
Yes, the Shark Bite stopped getting made, and HDZero finally made the VRX, and they made it similar, a little larger, a little bit different. Added to the features, changed a couple things for $200 instead of $250, so they were able to come in under that previous price for the Shark Bite, and now we have HDZero VRX. So we get 4 SMAs, so instead of those 2 patches that were included, now you've got 4 SMA antennas, and you can kind of pick and choose however you want. And they're all nice and exposed for you. So they don't have the included patches, but it is at least a little more convenient for the SMA access. There's some mounting rails on there for the True RC patches. There's a real-time clock in there so they can stamp the recordings with time and date. I know there's some issues with that. There's a backpack expansion plug. We've talked about how ExpressLRS has a backpack for HDZero. And now there's a plug where you can plug in nice and easy for the ExpressLRS backpack, and they'll record your audio if you're standing around.
Ambient audio recording. I'm a big fan of that, of course. And it just looks like it's really solid. The price coming down to $200 from $250. On the other hand, you have to buy 2 more antennas, which may be another $20. So it's close to price parity. But in this day and age, the fact that the price didn't go up is kind of saying a lot from 2 years ago. Pre-orders. I think I saw that pre-orders are open now. Is that right?
I could not find. I tried to find a link and I couldn't find one, but I'm sure there are a couple of random sites that do have them up. I don't know.
I thought I saw that someone was taking pre-orders for it.
Gotcha. Maybe the chat can let us know.
Oh yeah, good. Very exciting to see this coming soon.
Yeah. So the other couple things that got announced recently as well, we got the Whoop Lite VTX. So everybody's been asking about that Lite Whoop VTX for a long time, and that has finally also been released. Super tiny Whoop VTX. It comes in at 4.5 grams for the VTX without the shielding. So super small. And then not only did we get this Whoop VTX, we also got a bundle. And I think the bundle is pretty awesome. People will be pretty excited about this because we got a Nano Lite camera. This might be the lightest HD camera I've ever seen. It's 1.5 grams for a 14x16 Nano Lite camera that has the same sensor as the HDZero, the previous HDZero camera, the bigger one.
But a much smaller lens, so we won't get the same image quality.
Correct.
But and I asked Ryan Quellet. I said, "This is pretty cool. What do you think would be a good quad to put this in?" And I suggested something like the Darwin FPV Baby 8, but he pointed out that this camera. Unfortunately, we don't have a great picture of it, but he pointed out this camera is so shallow that actually it's really not good for much more than a whoop, where it's going to go straight in the canopy. That on a typical, it's going to be mounted so far back that it's going to have standoffs in view.
Yeah, this specific camera, I think, is very much like, hey, this is as small and light as we can get it, and so you can jam this thing in the whoop and have it close as possible to racing spec. Because for me, this is now down to the weight where I would race this in a 65mm whoop race.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, you're down there at the weight. You have much better video range, and much better control range with ExpressLRS. This is going to completely change what tiny whoops are. I think you're going to see a lot of people going, like if you're a big, like, there's people out there who basically fly tiny whoops, and that's like all they fly, right? These people, why would they not just go 100% HDZero at this point?
Yeah, I think this is the time where it becomes like hard to argue. I mean, and $100 for this kit with the MIPI cable and antenna is super compelling. I mean, you can't get a Vista for that, and it's way heavier. So yeah, we're at the point now where this is super compelling. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Now, so going back to the receiver, some people are going to want to wait for the goggles that HDZero is also working on. And the time frame on those is further out, I think. But for people who have existing goggles, this is
last we heard there would be a beta in May. But I would imagine with all the lockdowns and stuff that might be pushed out. I think I said at that point, you know, June or July is probably my guess. So I'd assume then, but you know, as soon as they can show them to us, I'm sure we'll be seeing the beta testing of the goggles. So.
Okay. Really exciting stuff. Great work, HDZero, as always. Everybody wants to focus on the one place where HDZero is not the best, which is a pretty big place. You know, general cruising, people who aren't super sensitive to latency, and they're like, well, you know, why does HDZero even exist, or something to that effect? And they miss that there are several places where HDZero is absolutely the best, like where DJI can't even compete. And like one of those is 1S whoops. DJI simply cannot exist in that realm.
And will almost surely never exist in that realm.
And like granted, that's a smallish, I mean, I don't know, 1S whoops is actually pretty popular.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's keep it up.
So, yeah, along with this HDZero news, we did want to bring one thing to your attention. So I've heard a couple things, rumblings in my DMs and stuff. People don't want to go on record, of course, but we did find one person who went on record at Mads Tech's comments on one of his videos. They wanted to bring to you some information about the margins of HDZero. And maybe it's not a big deal, but that's kind of why we're just talking about it. We want to have a little discussion about it. So FlyHigh FPV posted and said, it's a hard pass for me. I wanted to sell the VRX in my store. But HDZero is only giving dealers 12 to 15% margins on these units, which leaves not enough margin for retail. And 12 to 50%, if that is correct, is pretty small, and that does match a lot of the information I've received by DM as well. So I kind of just wanted to talk about.
Blunty, people may not know this. You actually have run a store. I'm not actually sure if you still do. I think you did.
Yeah, I went ahead and closed it because it's just so hard to keep margins in this hobby.
It's a pain in the ass, right? What's a typical retail margin? So the store buys it from the dealer or the manufacturer, and then they mark it up to their customers.
Yeah, so it can vary. It totally depends, I think, if you're buying like cheap Chinese parts versus moving up the scale to like category and stuff. I know a lot of vendors don't like to talk about their margins, but I don't own a store anymore, so I get to tell you. TBS margins are somewhere in the 35 to 40%.
Oh, you're going to name names.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have any reason to not to name names. So, but,
okay. Well, damn. It's a good.
When I paid. When I was buying like HDLRC flight controllers and stuff like that, those were like, 50 to 60% margins, but that's like on really cheap flight controllers that are like bottom of the barrel, like Diatone, I think was 50 to 60%.
So we're talking about like a $25 or $30 flight controller.
Correct.
At which point, if you only had a 25% margin, you wouldn't cover your shipping, right?
Yes.
If you're doing free shipping or something. So they need to have a higher percentage on the cheaper product so that there's anything there for the dealer. Okay.
Yeah, and then so like I said, TBS somewhere around 35 as far as I know. But then if you move up to DJI, now DJI is going to be right in the same bracket as HDZero, and I think that's kind of the conversation. I think a part of the conversation that should be had is like DJI right now, as far as I know, is somewhere in the 15% bracket, very similar to the HDZero number that I've been told. So if that's the case, DJI is a $1 billion company; and they can demand what they want, but if you're comparing to like high-end HD systems, I think that I don't know. I think there's some comparison to be made there to say like, this is why the margins are somewhat similar. This isn't like an easy thing to make. Shit is expensive. HD is hard. It's hard to cut in better margins, right?
I think one of the questions that deserves to be addressed, and you're welcome to address it, is that normal that a $200 product would have a lower margin than is that because dealers are complaining?
Yes.
Some dealers, FlyHigh FPV is complaining, saying no, that's not okay.
Yeah, definitely less, but not that much less, like not
Okay.
15%. From what I've seen, like high-end products can go like high-end goggles and stuff, I believe are somewhere in the 25 to 30%, depending on where you're getting them from. Those I didn't personally order, so I can't give you exact numbers.
So what
like
it seems
a Tango
like
2 was the same margin. Like a Tango 2 was the same margin as the rest of TBS's stuff. It was all
30
right around
40%.
that. Yeah.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that the 12 to 15% margin that, according to this report, according to Fly High FPV, who that both HDZero and DJI are offering, is low for a product in that price point, and stores will struggle to, like, one of the stories I heard was a store saying, well, look, if I do free shipping on orders over $50, normally I make my money back and I cover that. But if they buy one HDZero VRX for $200, that doesn't cover my free shipping. I have nothing left to pay my warehouse workers, so I'm losing money on these and I can't carry them. It sounds like that number is low, but with DJI, for some reason, stores are willing to suck it up. Maybe they do more volume, or maybe it's just, like, I remember a store saying, well, I guess it doesn't matter. There's no point in anonymizing the store. There was a store that wasn't able to sell TBS products because Trappy didn't like, it was race day quads. And there was a time when Tyler started buying TBS products at retail and carrying them in his store because just having them in the store was enough of a draw that people would come to the store, and if they didn't see them, they'd be like, I'm out of here. So, like, for whatever reason, stores are willing to accept that margin from DJI, but I think it's fair to say that HDZero and DJI are not in the same position in terms of customer demand and ability to dictate to stores, STFU, take it or leave it.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think this is an interesting thing to consider. Like, I don't know, like we said before many times, and like I said just earlier, HD is really hard. Like, this is not like, all this stuff isn't cheap, and there's like a big margin and everybody's making a ton of money. So I think that, our Rick Ben says, can't the dealers just sell it for
why don't
more
they
if
just
they're
raise the
complaining?
price?
I was told by unsourceable people that they were not allowed to do that. They were messaged essentially when they did that, and they were told, hey, we don't appreciate you doing that, please bring that back down where
Why?
it was, which isn't like something
That's
legally
not
you can
legal.
force. You can't force that legally, but you can suggest that. So right. Yeah.
Alrighty. So that's where we're at. But the reason we got the title that we do is that some people have suggested that the low margin on HDZero products is a threat to the future of the product. And I feel like, that's something that you wanted to weigh in on by putting this in the news.
It's just a question of like, will there be a case of enough retailers deciding that the margins aren't worth it to drop it, and then there not being enough demand because not enough places have it to sell to people to build this, like, you have to build a user base of it, right? So
right.
if large places stop selling it for some reason or decide not to sell it, then maybe that's hard to source that. Or maybe if the place you normally order from doesn't have it, maybe you decide not to purchase it. Or maybe you don't get that extra VTX with your order that you would have gotten, or like things like that. And I wonder if those things will start to add up over time. And there's also a question of like, will they be able to maintain these margins? How much are they making on the back end? We don't know all that information. DJI is $1 billion company, and they can subsidize all that stuff through the rest of the company. They have all the R&D that they spent on the P1 chip, but that R&D is spread across 50 products. And, there's a lot of different ways that you can move that stuff around. Whereas it's going to be a lot harder for a company like Divimath and the HDZero arm of that to move that around when there's not as many moving parts.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, obviously we don't know. We can't say. If there's user demand, then stores will carry it. The more demand there is, the more stores will be willing to, kind of swallow their objections and take what they can get. And if there's not user demand, then stores will be like, I'm going to let this slide. We could certainly imagine a worst case scenario where HDZero sells direct, and then, you don't have that margin, but that would certainly be bad for the system.
I think the worst thing that could happen is prices have to go up.
Okay, fair enough.
If there's an across the board, like, hey, this is the worst thing that could happen if the prices have to get bumped, I think that's across the board. People are going to be upset about that. And whether there's a good reason for that or not, I can't say. It's very likely that the chips cost more, and there should be like that. But consumer visual of the situation and the fact that DJI isn't going to be increasing prices, I think those are the kind of things that I would consider. So.
Yeah, I certainly don't think there's a lot of room in customers' minds for the price of HDZero to go much higher. It's already close to the price of DJI, and the people over in the HDZero Facebook group will, don't compare it to DJI. That's not fair. That's not what we're here for. It's like, well, guess what? Every single person who's getting ready to swipe their credit card is comparing it to DJI. Sorry. And you know, when they're close to the same price, I mean, if it was significantly cheaper, it would do significantly better. If they're close to the same price, there are still going to be some people who feel it's the right thing. If it's more expensive, I think that's going to really sting. So,
yeah.
All
right.
Alrighty, moving on.
So, we talked about DJI V3, and now we're going to talk about another DJI V3 rumor. There was a picture that was posted around the interwebs, and Madstech shared in a video of basically a picture of an OSD, and in the picture is described by the person who sent it as canvas mode, digital, new system, new brand. So the question is, what does that mean?
Yeah.
How could, if it's actually a new brand, then I have no idea what this is. It could, you know, like this is like, who knows? But it certainly does have a lot of things in the same places that DJI does.
Right. It looks a lot like, but how could a DJI goggle have canvas mode without the margarine route? Is this like the margarine project making their? We talked previously about how the root project would have to make their own front end for the goggles. Could that be what we're looking at?
Well, I think what the theory is that what we're looking at is a V3 goggle that supports canvas mode on the VTX that it's attached to.
Because if it was the root project, the margarine project, they would just say, "Oh yeah, that's us."
Well, also, there's no current way to get the margarine project and that OSD on at the same time. But
we talked about how they could write their own front end that draws that OSD. So like
sure,
theoretically, they could have done it
in the last few days.
But they haven't.
Yeah, with sourcing time, I don't think that's happening.
Yeah. Junus agrees it's not margarine. That's the thing. They would just say, "Yeah, we did it." So this is definitely not a rooted goggle or an aftermarket hack that we know.
I can tell you, so I wasn't able to find this in a public enough sourced place to tell you who sent it. But what I will tell you is a company that you're familiar with sent this. It's not like you know what I mean? So like it's coming from someone and it's information about a new product.
So let's think about this. This is such a DJI thing to do. It's such a thing they're like, F you. We didn't make it backwards compatible. Give us $600 more of your money and buy all new air units. But we finally put in canvas mode, guys! Yay! Who's happy? Yeah. And we're like, you son of a... Take my money. Take it. Shut up. Right? Such a DJI thing to do.
We're getting corrected. It's MSP DisplayPort, not canvas mode. Yes, we got you. Yeah.
Okay, fair. That's true.
At some point, that's just gonna like I don't
Dominic
know.
Clifton.
I feel like...
Thank you, Dominic Clifton. I wish I could nickname him. It's MSP DisplayPort, not canvas mode. Thank you. Eventually, we'll get it right. Okay, so then that's a suggestion that the V3 goggle and the V3 air unit or whatever it is. All right, we're trading a lot in suggestions and rumor, but hey, that's the world we live in. Next up, we have a big PSA about a new law that's coming up in Oregon. And the first thing I always say is, if you don't live in Oregon, still need to listen to this. Because these laws that get passed in one place are seen by other cities, counties, states, and when they pass, they're like, oh, let's do this. So everyone needs to be concerned about this. This is just the tip of the spear. And it's a bad law. I've heard some people saying it's bad and other people saying they like it, I think. I'm confused.
The confusing part is that overall, most people are like, hey, this rule's okay. Like the fact that you're adding rules is okay. There probably needs to be a way to say you can't take off and land from an area if it's like a protected bird sanctuary or if it's like a special area, right? Currently, there's no legislation in Oregon that says they can make that rule as the Oregon.
Okay, so this this sign right here, which says you can't take off your drones during raptor nesting season, which that makes sense. The raptors are trying to get their, he's trying to make his moves. He's got the music playing. She's kind of giving him the eye, and then a drone flies overhead and just F's up his game. That's not okay. But it's not legally enforceable.
My understanding is, yes, that is a suggestion at this current time. And the point of this law is to make it so that if they wanted to basically add areas that you don't want people in, you can set laws for those areas and then put up signs that regulate people out of those specific places.
Okay.
However, the concern here is that there's two versions of this law, and which one is not written yet. So this will decide basically which one they write when they pass this law. And so there's two versions. One is that everywhere is open, and that the Park Service can make rules for where you're not allowed to fly.
Like opt out.
Yeah, hey, this is a wildlife sanctuary, you're not allowed to fly here. Hey, this is a raptor thing, you're not allowed, whatever.
But anywhere you are not specifically prohibited from flying, you are allowed to fly.
Correct.
Okay, sounds good. I like that. That sounds great.
Yeah, the other version of this law is that they're trying to make it so that you cannot take off and land from anywhere as a rule. And then you would be allowed specifically, each park's group and each set of things would need to make laws for the places where you're then allowed to fly. So they would have to find special accepted areas and say, this is where you're okay, this is where you're okay, and those would be specific spots.
It seems like number one is clearly the one that we want. Why would anyone prefer number two? Does anyone prefer number two? Yeah,
well, unfortunately, it seems like a lot of commenters who are commenting on this prefer number two.
Well, they're they're not people in the FPV community, though, right?
Correct, and that's part of why we're asking, and why we're bringing this up today, and asking you guys to make a comment on this. So I'll post the comment link in the public chat, basically, but what we're asking for is you to go make a public comment here, basically explaining that, like, you do support this law, but in your opinion, you do not believe that it should be all regulated from the get-go. They should be able to make exceptions, and they should say, like, hey, basically explain it however you like. I think the problem is, like, they don't want form letters. He even specifically says in the press release from the OPB, he says, please do not, like, we want new information. We want new takes, kind of. Okay, that's not, probably need to say a little bit more than that. Yeah. But basically the gist of it should be like, hey, I support the fact that all areas should be flyable with drones in state parks, and parks should be able to make exceptions to ban drones from takeoff and landing in certain areas based on their considerations, something like that. And let them know that you support that. Because if you go through some of these comments, there is a lot of comments from people who are against this, or who basically don't know what they're talking about, but say, no drones, we don't like drones. And so correct. And this has happened already. In this article, Kenji Shigahara points out that this has happened already, I believe, in Tennessee. And in Tennessee, there are multiple state parks in which you can only fly in a corner. And that's a very small area allowed. And basically, they're just all not flyable. And that has never changed. So, yeah. Yes. Yeah, they're saying you're muted. Is there any way you can mute to them and not me?
Oh, apparently I was muted because I was coughing. Sorry.
Gotcha.
I was trying to be polite. Okay, let's continue. I was saying I'm obviously starting to cough and sniffle now, so we need to get through this. But we can't rush through this next story because Limon, one of the Betaflight devs, he did the same test that me and Stingy did, where he tested 250 hertz versus 55 hertz, and he did it in a racing environment. And should we just spoil the results?
Yeah, I mean, we could probably just spoil the results, I think.
Yeah. They could tell the difference.
Yeah, they could definitely tell the difference. Basically, one of them got 80%, and one of them got 100% out of 10. And so 10 seems like a good number.
I mean, you could argue that you need a larger sample size to be more confident, but with 8 out of 10 and 10 out of 10 success rate, I feel like, yeah, no, they basically nailed it. The big question, I think, is why were they able to tell the difference, but me and Stingy were not? And if you say you're shitty pilots, I'm going to be unhappy.
You're old men. No, that's not why. No, but one thing he talks about a lot, or a little bit at least in the video, and they address, is that they each thought that it was likely the corrections that were making them feel it. Basically, they would go and try to do, flip rolls, and they would try to do like freestyle moves, and wouldn't be able to tell. And then they would go and fly the track and make those minor corrections. And those little minor corrections were showing them like, oh, I can feel it now. Oh, this is the slow one. Oh, this is the fast one. So yeah, I think that, I think it's not just the fact of like, hey, I'm like flying around quickly in the air. It's like, hey, I need to react to changes that I'm expecting or not expecting. And so part of what I was thinking is, I bet you could tell a difference too if you did bando bashers or people who always like hit really tight gaps or did like proxy freestyle, who are doing a similar thing. Like, hey, I'm going to fly around this corner and I need to make a quick adjustment so I don't clip the top of this thing. And I bet that's where you're going to start to see those changes. Whereas that open air freestyle where you're not as making those quick adjustments and you're not so tight, I bet it's a lot harder to tell because you can't really tell how fast those adjustments happen.
Yeah. I was happy to see this test done, though. I mean, me and Stingy's test was just a throwaway. We decided to try it out. But I'm happy to see a more rigorous test done and to show that for some people, at least, it definitely does make a difference. Now, you wanted to segue into a discussion about LQ thresholds for racing and freestyle based on this. Tell us more about that.
So one of the things I talked to Lyman about, I discussed a lot of the video with him because I thought it was so good.
Is it Lyman?
I might be
Limon. Okay.
I don't know. I say Lyman. But
okay,
Ivan,
no problem. Ivan.
I talked to Ivan about this video. He said that he flies 250 hertz on purpose and not a faster refresh rate because he wants to make sure he maintains his LQ while he's on the racetrack. And for him, LQ is important enough that it's better than having a lower latency and having that consistent, solid, high LQ. And I think maybe it's important to let people know that if you are in these like hardcore proxy freestyle situations where you're really pushing it to the limit, or if you're like on a racetrack where you're like clipping around the racetrack constantly, I think it's important to consider that the LQ threshold we hear sometimes of like, hey, you won't fail safe before you hit 70, right? Those are fail safe values, but those aren't like, hey, I'm going to feel good and have consistent flying values. So I think in a lot of cases, people might benefit from switching to a lower packet rate if they're having lower LQs, and if that lower packet rate can maintain a max or higher LQ.
Yeah. This idea that there's an LQ threshold where, quote unquote, you fail safe is kind of misguided. It is true that there's a point where the Crossfire, let's pick on Crossfire, there's a point where the Crossfire system says, okay, I'm done. But like if you look at Express LRS will keep transmitting data, and I've heard long distance pilots say they've gotten down to like 15% LQ and we're still basically able to fly because Express LRS doesn't just arbitrarily decide to nix the link when the LQ gets too low. So LQ is just what percentage of your packets are getting through. And if you're running at 75 LQ with Crossfire and you're not fail-safing, it still means that 25% of your packets aren't getting through. And that's a really inconsistent latency and messing with your feed forward and all this other nonsense. And I think your argument is... Yeah, go ahead.
Well, all that predictive work they've done, like all that RC smoothing code and stuff, like all that is meant to see all the packets. As soon as you stop seeing packets, then you're going to have that jitter, or you're going to have jumps, and you're going to have drops and dips and stuff from it, like misinterpreting what you're doing.
So I think your argument would be that you basically always want to see a really high LQ, like 90, like 100%, 99% might not always be achievable. But at some point, like 90, 95%, you probably should drop down in Express LRS from 250 to 100 or maybe lower. Or you could increase your output power, which will have the same effect, and get that LQ back up. Don't be satisfied.
Right. If you're in a scenario where you care about that stuff, I think open air freestyle, I don't think it's going to matter as much. But I think like as soon as you're doing racing or anything where you're really worried and you're already like min-maxing your latency and you're running 500 hertz because you're really worried about how much your latency is and what your packet rate is, I think that's the point where you should start to consider, like, I should also be monitoring my LQ at 500 and making sure I'm getting that, you know, all those packets through.
Yeah. Yep. That consistency is more important than an inconsistent higher rate.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't like to see LQ down. I mean, if it's below 90, I'm like, what's up? Why is it like this? Even though, but on the other hand, if you're doing like long range cruising, well, here's the thing though, Blunty. If you're doing long range cruising, what do you care about 500 hertz anyway? Yeah. What do you care? Right?
Sure. Well, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Good point. Next up, we got a little bit of news related to me. Radiomaster TX16S Mark II has released. I've got a review video out. And Blunty, I think in the interest of, you know, not going too long, I think, is there anything specific you want to say about this other than maybe we could just refer people to my channel?
Yeah, we've been talking. I forgot. Yeah, so basically, I just want to let people know that we teased it for a little while. People have been waiting on it. If you did not hear, there is an internal Express LRS version with the TX16S that you can buy. It's called the Mark II, and it has the internal Express LRS option. So if you were looking for that full-size radio with that internal Express LRS and you don't want the 4-in-1, now you can get it.
And there's a ton of different versions here on the Radiomaster website, including the JB edition, but also including just the standard edition, as well as the Minshan Kim Premium and some other versions made for specific stores like Pyrodrone and 533 and Lumineer. And I've got a video on my channel. You can go to my channel. It's probably the second last video I put out, running them all down and helping you decide which one you want to get. Okay. Another piece of Express LRS news. Mustard Tiger tested some Express LRS antennas.
Yeah.
What did he find?
Well, we've shown some different testing from various folks, including Sandor de Brunner. We do a lot. So Mustard Tiger went through and assembled a whole bunch of different testing for some different antennas in the Express LRS world, and some different ones like the Free Sky monopole, for instance, which is pretty bad. If you look down at that third set, that Free Sky IPEX 1 monopole actually got 74% range multiplier. Basically, your dB would be lowered, your gain would be lowered by 2.6 if you use that antenna. So it's pretty interesting to see some of these variances, and some of these performing really well.
Now, Sandor de Brunner actually reached out to me. He of course, is an expert on RF stuff and does his own RF testing. And he said, I'm just going to read off his chat. He said, you can't just sort that list by SWR, which is what they're basically doing, and decide which antenna is the best. I can build you a totally crap antenna with perfect resonance over multiple bands that says nothing about the actual performance of the antenna. And unfortunately, so what he's basically saying is, this is one piece of data, the SWR, the efficiency of the antenna, but it doesn't tell you everything about the antenna's performance, just its tuning. But then he didn't go on to say what else we should really care about. He talks about antenna gain and coverage, like a Moxon is a different coverage pattern than a dipole. I felt we should point that out, but I also don't really know what to say after that. Like, obviously having good SW, if it had bad SWR, then it would be a bad antenna. But that's not the be-all, end-all, I think is his point.
Like the IPEX monopole is terrible.
Right. That IPEX monopole with terrible SWR is just a badly made antenna and should be rejected. But then if you've got like all these other antennas up around 98%, doesn't mean they're all equally good for every application. Some could still be better than others based on other characteristics than SWR. So I guess that's the takeaway.
Well,
all right.
Antenna data from you.
Link to that is in the show notes if you want to check that out.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Next up, we've got events.
Yes.
Nope, I'm not doing that was the Express LRS antenna test. Damn it. Oh, well. Upcoming events.
All right. So in Hartselle, we talked about this last year. And in Hartselle, there's a camping trip coming up on June 10th through the 12th in Hartselle, Colorado. if you wanted to go out and hang out with some folks and have a good time in Hartselle, Colorado, and camp and fly wings and just have a good old time. They've done it a few years in a row. I'm not sure how many years in a row. It's been quite a few. But sign up and head on out there. It's a good time.
All right. If you're near Hartselle, Colorado, it's a great chance to meet up with some people and fly some FPV. Okay. We got It's Barely News, Blunty. Next up. Yeah. It's Barely News is items that are not really strictly newsworthy on their own, but still thought you'd be interested in them. And I'm going to insert something here that the Discord server has insisted we have to cover. Give me 1 second, and then I'll let you go on with your normal ones. Cool Cat says we have to go back and follow up on this story of these dogs in the La Palma volcano. We previously covered this when they were feeding the dogs. The dogs were trapped by volcano magma, lava, whichever it is, and they were feeding them by drone. Well, the dogs have been rescued. Yay! They've been rescued, and now they are no longer in danger.
Good to hear.
Yeah, I really thought there would be some dogs in this story. Like, I'm scrolling through here looking for a thumbnail with some dogs in it. That's what we want. We want to see the puppies. Oh, you know what I don't care about? You. Who are you? I don't care. This volcano? Also don't care. I came here for puppies. Rescue of dogs. It's YouTube Analytics 101. If you have rescue of dogs in the title, I need to see the rescue of dogs. Your retention is crap. Okay, sorry.
All right.
Let's move on.
Next up, we've shown this. I think we showed this last year a little bit. Reed Timmer is a storm chaser, and he has been going out with Alex Vanover for a while now. And I think they were, this is from 7 hours ago, but they've been doing this all over the place. I think
oh wow, this is a new video.
Today. Yeah, they were just streaming earlier today actually, and Vanover's been ripping some tornadoes.
Yeah, why not?
It's pretty crazy to watch and hear him talk about flying in the tornadoes, because it's just so rare you get that much wind. And
no shit.
It's just a special application, like one thing people were talking about was iTerm. Your iTerm is probably building like crazy the whole time you're doing that. And he was talking about having trouble getting it to fly.
At all?
That was kind of, yeah.
So
he's basically saying like, in a lot of cases, he's full throttle in these situations.
Is he going to go into the tornado in this video? Or am I going to rant again about misleading titles?
Well, I mean, basically they show a lot of like around the tornado, and he's basically caught in it as much as he can fly.
Right, because if you actually went into it, that would just be the end. You'd never get your drone back.
Yeah, I mean,
look how pitched down he is. He's like way pitched down.
With a high camera angle.
Yeah. He's
basically just trying to get it
not
to
get
move
carried away.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's kind of cool, although I got to admit, it's not much. I mean, I'm just like looking at the ground here. Suction vortex. Okay. That's kind of cool. But I should probably watch the whole video. It would probably be cooler if I watched the whole video. Next up, a history of the excuse me, drone delivery system. What do we got here, Blunty?
Yeah, I wanted to shout that out. This article by Bloomberg is amazing. Like, it is really good. Like, we've talked before about these different things, but they went through the entire history essentially of the Amazon drone delivery service. We talked a little bit before, I think last year, about them scaling it back and getting rid of a lot of people, changing leads and stuff, and they go over a lot of that here. If you're interested in any way about Amazon's drone delivery service or how drone delivery has been working in some of these cases, this is a pretty interesting thing. This almost reads like a post-mortem, even though they're not really dead. It's almost there, I think, in a lot of these cases when you read it. So a lot of lack of safety lately, a lot of crashes when they've never had crashes before and things. So an interesting read, and I don't think it looks good for Amazon's drone service as we expected.
We really haven't seen any drone delivery services like really take off. Many have started, many have sort of petered out. None have blown up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like last mile has been the big push. Both Google Wing and that one that does it for Walmart, I always forget the name of. Both of them seem to drone up. Both of them seem to be very focused on last mile delivery, and that seems to be like where we'll see that go for a while. Whereas Amazon is still trying to push that 7-mile delivery range, 5-pound package number.
No.
Yeah.
Good luck with that, Jeff Bezos. You can't. Looks like you can't have everything you want, Jeff Bezos.
Very true.
Only almost everything you want. All right, Blunty. Blunty, we got a discussion here. I wonder if we should can we just push, we're like 7:20. Can we push that to next week?
Sure. Yeah, we could do
Let's
that.
push that to next week. Angle mode in whoop racing. Ooh, you'll have to tune in next week to get that. I'm going to read these super chats. Isaac Mitchell, thank you for $2. Otis, thank you for $5. Just bought a Vista Nebula Pro just in case. And Lucas Celeste, thanks for $5. Is the power port on the back the same as is on a Naked Hero 8 from GepRC? Do we know anything about the plug on the GoPro Bone?
It is just a 3-port, like a 3-pin plug. I don't know what Molex style it is, but it does look a little different because it's got like 3 little nibs in it.
Okay.
I compared to a couple of them, and it did not match like the iFlight GoCam. It did not match like a couple other ones I looked at, but yeah, a couple it may match. I'm not sure.
All right. It doesn't match any of the ones that we don't know it to match any of the pre-existing ones. Okay, so there we go. All righty, guys. Kevin Summers says it's a GH 1.25. I don't know if he's right, but thank you, Kevin, for that information. And here is what we all really wanted before we close for the evening. The dogs being rescued. They left a sign. The dogs have been A-team.
They're rescued by the A-team. Okay.
The dogs, Los Perros, the dogs, están bien. The dogs are okay. I don't really speak Spanish, but I'm feeling it out. Están bien. That means the dogs are okay, right? I think so. You don't speak Spanish either. What do I know?
I don't. Nope.
Ooh, MK in the chat works for Flex Seal. Wow, there's a lot of potential there. We'll have to talk about it next week. That is going to do it for us this week, folks. Thank you so much for sticking around. I am going to go chug a bottle of NyQuil and get some sleep, and hopefully by next week I'll be right as rain. In the meantime, Bien is fine. The dogs are fine. Okay, good. In the meantime, y'all have fun. I'll see you throughout the week. Blunty, thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys as well.
Thanks, guys.
We're going to get out of here. Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody.